Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new AYANEO Retro Mini PC, model number AM02. This is a pretty powerful mini PC that takes design elements and is a tribute to the North American NES game console. But it's more than that. It has a 4-inch multi-touch screen built into the top of it, and we're going to run this thing through its paces. Because at its heart, it has a pretty powerful processor. It's got an AMD Ryzen 7 7840HS, which can use up to 45 watts of power and basically lets you play both new games and also a lot of older games. This is a 4nm integrated chip that's a Zen 4, and it has 8 cores and can do up to 16 threads. It uses DDR5 5600 MHz RAM. This particular unit here has 32 gigabytes of RAM, but it'll support up to 64 gigabytes of dual channel memory. It uses high-speed M.2 storage. This particular review unit here came with 1 terabyte, but you can put up to 8 terabytes in here if you want. It supports Wi-Fi 6E as well as Bluetooth 5.2. And to keep all this cool, it sucks air from the bottom of the unit, and it has a 4 copper pipe cooling system in there that they've created just for this system, so I guess it's brand new. And it comes pre-installed with Windows 11 Home version. I like how these mini PCs come with all of the cables that you're probably going to need, including screwdrivers as well as adapters for different regions, and you have a USB brick and also HDMI cables. One of its cool features is that it has a hidden door right here. So you push the button on the top and it pops open, and then inside there it reveals a USB-C port. There are also 2 USB-A ports and a 3.5mm audio jack. On the back are 2 more USB-A ports, as well as a digital display port there, as well as your HDMI port. You have 2 Ethernet ports, and then that's where you plug in the power, the USB-C power, and then that's a cable lock if you need it. And so as you can see, it's got most of the connections that you would probably need, which is pretty remarkable considering just how small this is. And that's one of the things I really love about these mini PCs, is that you don't really give up much. You can plug a ton of stuff into this. AYANEO sent me this as a preview unit, and basically this is going to start at $440 US. That's for the bare bones version if you've already got RAM and storage. And that's the early bird price. I guess it's going to go up to $500 after that. If you need RAM and storage, you can get the version that comes with that. So for $530, you can get 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. And then it just goes up from there. But let's talk about that 4-inch display on the top, because that's something that you normally don't see. The main display shows a bunch of real-time statistics, like how many frames per second that you're currently getting, your total wattage and power usage, your fan speed, your free space on your hard drive, also how hard your CPU and your GPU are working, the temperature, your free RAM, and obviously a bunch more. And what's cool is that it lets you change these power settings on the fly using that touchscreen. So you see it here where you can touch it and then change to a different preset that you can configure in Windows. And I guess this is running Linux, so it actually functions outside of Windows, or I guess probably in parallel with it. It talks with it, it works with Windows. I'm not entirely sure, but it's not dependent on Windows. So I guess you could probably install Linux as your main operating system and still get to use this touchscreen. And then what you can do is swipe once and you get a big display that shows your date and time, which should be interesting because you could put this on your desk or maybe next to your bed, I guess, and use it as a clock. And then another swipe and you get to the quick settings. So here you can see you can change the screen brightness. You can also turn it on or off. Now they've got more things planned for this screen. This is just the early review unit, and so this preview one doesn't yet support all of the wallpapers that they are advertising that are coming when it actually ships. And so I wish I could show you wallpapers and custom artwork here, because I think that would look really cool, but just be aware that they've got plans for this and they're gonna update it as it gets closer to shipping. Now let's go ahead and boot into Windows. And like I said, we are rocking 32 gigabytes of RAM and it has 1 terabyte of storage. And I've installed a bunch of stuff on here, both newer games and also older games to test. But I do want to show you some of the software that comes with it, starting with 2 of them here. So it comes with IA Space and also an assistant. And you see those down on the taskbar there. When you bring up the assistant, it shows a side panel right there, and then you can quickly change things like the power usage depending on what type of game you're playing. If you're playing a AAA game, you need the most power possible. There's also normal. You can set it for retro games, etc. You can also put a limiter on the frame rate too. You can also instantly bring up a performance overlay that I think looks pretty nice. There's a lot of really good information in here that will basically help you see exactly how the computer is running in any particular game. You can also manually configure the fan speed. There's a bunch of other options in here, including shortcuts to your display brightness, your Bluetooth settings, your Wi-Fi, your audio, as well as shortcuts to the task manager, device manager, Windows control panel, and a bunch more. And so that's the assistant, but they've got another app on here called the iSpace app. And this functions mostly as a library manager for all of your games, kind of like Steam. And basically what happens is that it scans your hard drive and then lists them here for your convenience. You don't have to use this, but it's included. And so it looks pretty nice. It's also in these apps where you'll configure that second external screen. Now, it's very limited with this preview unit right here. They actually did an update a couple days ago and added stuff to it, so they're working on it. I'm not entirely sure what's going to ultimately be in there, but it does seem like that if you want to dig deep into settings for that multi-touch screen, this is where you'll do it. I should also mention that the very first thing that I do when I get a new PC like this for review, whether it's a mini PC from China or a laptop or desktop from Dell or Lenovo, is that I run all of the Windows security updates and I do a full virus scan. And as you see here, this PC came up clean. And by the way, if you don't want any of this stuff, you can always wipe the hard drive and do a fresh install of Windows or Linux or really any operating system that you want. But you guys came here for games, so let's go ahead and run some benchmarks on this. We're going to start with a 3D Mark. This is the Night Raid benchmark that was designed basically to test these integrated graphics. Now, as you see here, overall, the score was 26,835, which is right in line with what I've seen with other mini PCs using this same AMD Radeon 780M processor. So that's a pretty good score and one that I anticipated that we would probably see. Next up, I jumped into Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and in general, a little mini PC like this with the, that integrated graphics, I'm expecting it to get around medium settings at 1080p. You can push that a little bit if you want to, but you see here, using its built-in benchmarking tool, it averages 39 frames per second, which I think you could easily get over 40 frames per second if you did want to turn off or turn down some of the other options. But I think the game is very playable on this. Now let's go ahead and check out Cyberpunk 2077. Also, I'm going to be testing this at 1080p, also with medium settings, and it runs through the benchmarking tool here, averaging about 42 frames a second and often pushes into the 50s. So that's pretty decent. I mean, that game is very graphically intense, and this one, especially at 1080p with medium settings, it's doing fine. But let's be honest, this thing looks like an NES. It's designed to appeal to retro gamers, and so we need to run some older games, right? We're going to take it back a little bit to the Xbox 360 era and check out Need for Speed The Run. So this is the delisted Windows version of this game, and as you see here, it runs great on this. Again, we're doing 1080p, and we are getting a pretty rock solid 60 frames a second here. So this was really nice. Actually, I did a previous video where I was kind of complaining that I could only get 30 out of this on another device, and someone's like, no, you just got to turn off VSync, and suddenly it unlocks the frame rate for you. So I was like, wow, this looks amazing. So this is such a cool game, by the way. I'm so bummed it's delisted. So any excuse to replay it, I'm going to take it. Now let's check out some GameCube emulation, and we got F-Zero here, and this is going through the Dolphin emulator, and this game, as you can see by this footage, is just flying by. It's fine. We're easily getting 50 and to 60 frames per second here, and you can also see it's only using about 25 watts of power, so it's not maxed out by any means. The only thing I would say is, and I'm not sure entirely why this is happening, is that occasionally there would be a little bit of an audio glitch, just a tiny almost skip in the audio, but then I would try to reproduce it or restart the level and it wouldn't be there. So I don't know if that's something specific with the Dolphin emulator where I need to go and just tweak it a little bit, but again, not a big deal, but I did want to mention it. Here I'm playing Wave Race Blue Storm, and we're getting about 25 to 35 frames, kind of depending on what's going on the screen. And I'll be honest, I don't know if there's a setting in Dolphin to push this harder and maybe get higher frame rates. Sometimes these games are designed to run at a specific frame rate. I'm not entirely sure, but I do feel like this is completely playable and it looks beautiful. Now let's go ahead and hop over to the PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 2 emulation, no surprise, runs great here. I'm starting with SSX3, and this game's running very smoothly. Now I do want to say, go ahead and ignore that frame rate counter that you're seeing on the screen up there. That's not even remotely accurate. It's probably just having a hard time detecting what the frame rate is because we're running an emulator, but it's definitely running very smoothly here, probably 60 frames a second. And as you can see, it's only using about 20 watts. Hopping over to Jack 3, we're getting very similar performance here. The game looks and runs great. And then I also fired up Dark Cloud 2 and ran through the intro here, and yeah, looks fantastic. So again, PlayStation 2 emulation, no problems. You guys know me, I love my PlayStation Portable, so we're gonna check out some PSP emulation here, and yeah, it looks great. I mean, the thing I love about PSP emulation is that the textures are upscaled and sharper here, and most of these games are running at a higher resolution and higher frame rate than you would get on a regular PSP. That's one of the great things about emulation here. And yeah, I mean, we're checking out Pursuit Force here. I think it looks fantastic. The only thing is that there is a little bit of texture pop-in that's happening. Not entirely sure what that is. Again, I don't think it's necessarily the computer itself. It's probably something to do with the emulation and the way the game is programmed, but I wanted to mention it. I checked out Crisis Core, and super sharp, razor sharp graphics here, high frame rate, looks fantastic. Also in X-Men Legends as well. And again, I just love how upscaled these look. It's almost like getting a brand new remaster, you know, or something like that. I just love it. And of course, we have to go back even further than that. And, you know, you might expect that 8-bit and 16-bit era games are going to run flawlessly. This is obviously overkill for all of that sort of emulation. So no big surprises here. This has more than enough horsepower to get this job done. And so that's what I like about this, is that there's a lot of speed and versatility with this machine. You can play newer games, like I said, in 1080p or maybe even a little bit higher than that, medium settings, but then you can also run everything before that pretty much. And I've mentioned it in previous reviews of these mini PCs, is that there's all this research and development going on to make these mobile processors just have a ton of power and a ton of speed, but yet not use a lot of energy. You know, there's just tons of research and development going into that stuff. So I guess the answer is, you know, should you pick this up over other low-cost mini PCs on the market? I would really say it depends on, do you care about the aesthetics of this particular device, right? This retro-inspired look, and also that second screen. I mean, that second screen is pretty cool, and once it supports all the custom wallpapers, that's pretty neat. But do you want to pay more for it? You know, or is it important to you? Not entirely sure. You know, unless you're gonna, again, be putting this on a desk or someplace where you would maybe use that touchscreen a lot. Either way, it's pretty cool. You know, I've been using this for about a week now and haven't ran into any real major issues or anything. I'll put a link to more information down in the video description below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.